When you hear the names of the most notorious serial killers, a few immediately come to mind. Bundy, Gacy, Dahmer. They are infamous because of the scale of their horror and the media storm that immortalized their monstrous acts. But there is a darker truth in the annals of American crime. For every killer you know, there is another who slipped through the cracks. Another who was never truly known. This is the story of a predator whose anonymity was his most lethal weapon. A man who became a pillar of his community while simultaneously dismantling the lives of over a dozen victims across 4 states for more than 30 years. His case file, only recently connected, spans 3 decades and dozens of dead ends. We call him the Quiet Man. In the small, sun-drenched town of Harmony Creek, Utah, a place where people left their doors unlocked and trust was a birthright, the vanishing of Sarah Jenkins was an anomaly. It was the summer of 1989. Sarah was a college student, home for the break, working a part-time job at the local library. She was reliable, predictable, and deeply loved. On the evening of August 14th, she clocked out at 7 p.m., waved goodnight to Mrs. Henderson at the front desk, and started the 3-block walk home. She never made it. Her absence wasn't registered until the next morning, when her mother found her bed untouched, her running shoes still by the door. The police response was immediate but limited. This wasn't a city. There were no surveillance cameras, no eyewitnesses, no strangers passing through. The consensus was grim but simple. Sarah must have run off or perhaps encountered a lone drifter. The case went cold in 6 months. It became a missing person file, not a murder investigation. The local police chief, a kind man named Dale Peterson, apologized to the Jenkins family, saying he was simply out of his depth. The town grieved, then moved on. Life in Harmony Creek returned to its comfortable, predictable rhythm. But in the city of Boise, Idaho, 2 years later, Detective Aaron Cole was looking at a different file with disturbing similarities. It was 1991. The victim was a young woman named Emily Hayes, who disappeared from a quiet park trail. Her body was found 3 days later, roughly 50 miles away from where she was last seen. The cause of death was precise, clinical, almost sterile. There was no excessive violence, no frenzied attack. Just a cold, calculated efficiency that chilled Cole to the bone. The most unnerving detail was the lack of evidence. No struggle, no defensive wounds. It was as if Emily had gone willingly with her killer, or was overpowered by a sudden, overwhelming force. The killer had taken great care to leave no fibers, no hair, no fingerprints. Cole ran the limited forensic data. He came up with nothing. He ran cross-state checks on cold cases, a tedious, manual process in the pre-digital age. He searched for disappearances in neighboring states that were initially dismissed as runaway cases or isolated incidents. That's when he found Sarah Jenkins in Utah. The Sarah Jenkins file from Harmony Creek was sparse, almost bare, but 2 things screamed at Detective Cole. First, the physical description of the missing woman was eerily similar to Emily Hayes. Mid-20s, long brown hair, quiet demeanor. Second, and most importantly, the date. Sarah vanished on August 14, 1989. Emily was found deceased in August 1991. The same month, 2 years apart. Cole called Chief Peterson in Utah. The older police chief, tired and apologetic, insisted there was no evidence of foul play in Sarah's case. It was a missing person. Cole tried to persuade him, detailing the almost identical physical profile, the calculated nature of Emily's death, and the unsettling August pattern. "Look, Detective," Peterson sighed over the crackling phone line, "we're talking about 2 cases 2 years apart in 2 different states. We had drifters, we had rumors. But we didn't have a body, and we sure didn't have anything to link it to Idaho." Cole was frustrated. He knew he was looking at a ghost. A killer who was already adept at making his victims disappear, and even more adept at making his crimes disappear into the noise of small-town police work. Over the next decade, Cole kept a separate, private filing cabinet labeled simply, August. He added 5 more names to that file. 1993, a disappearance in Nevada. 1995, a homicide in Oregon, ruled a botched robbery. 1998, a vanishing hitchhiker in Northern California. The pattern wasn't perfect, but it was there. The timing was often August or early September. The victims were young, trusting, and often on the periphery of their communities, easy targets whose absence wouldn't immediately trigger a full-scale multi-jurisdictional manhunt. The Quiet Man was exploiting the gaps between jurisdictions and the lack of communication between local, county, and state police. He didn't have a signature act. His signature was the absence of a signature. No notes, no calls, no taunts. Just a clean, cold disappearance. In Harmony Creek, Utah, the town that had forgotten Sarah Jenkins, lived a man named Arthur Vance. Arthur was everything a small town valued. He was a long-haul trucker by trade, which explained his frequent, long trips away from home, but he was home every weekend. He was a Sunday school teacher at the First Baptist Church. He volunteered at the local animal shelter. He was a man of routines. Arthur had an easy smile, a quick joke for anyone, and a reliable presence. He was the kind of man who would stop his truck on the highway to help a stranded motorist change a tire. No one in Harmony Creek would ever suspect him of a parking violation, let alone mass murder. And Arthur Vance was always home in August. He always took his 2-week annual vacation in August. In 2005, the town celebrated his 60th birthday with a surprise party at the fire hall. Chief Dale Peterson, now retired, shook Arthur's hand and thanked him for his decades of service to the community. The irony was palpable. The town was celebrating the man who had taken one of their own, right out from under their noses 16 years earlier. This is the chilling brilliance of the unknown serial killer. His crimes were performed in the anonymity of travel, but his life was lived in the blinding visibility of small-town respectability. Meanwhile, Detective Cole, who was now a profiler for a regional task force, was still working his August file. He had recently discovered a new technology, geofencing analysis on historical cellular data. He ran the historical data from the most recent and most difficult cold case in his file, the 2003 murder of Lisa Thorne in Arizona. The killer had left no trail, but Lisa had made a single, desperate, uncompleted call to her husband just before she was taken. Cole's team managed to isolate the ping location of that call. They ran every vehicle that had crossed through the remote desert corridor on that night. They looked for rental cars, commercial vehicles, anything that stood out. The breakthrough didn't come from a new lead. It came from a neglected old one. The only vehicle that consistently crossed through the general vicinities of 3 of Cole's August cases in Idaho, Nevada, and Arizona was a commercial rig registered to a small, independent freight company. And the driver? Arthur Vance. The evidence, when presented, was a tapestry of missed opportunities woven over 3 decades. Arthur Vance's trucking logs placed him within a 50-mile radius of 7 of Cole's August victims. His company rig, a massive, inconspicuous moving platform, was the perfect place to subdue, transport, and dispose of a victim. The meticulous, clean nature of the crimes mirrored the meticulous, clean nature of Arthur Vance, the Sunday school teacher. But the final piece of the puzzle, the piece that brought the horror home to Harmony Creek, was a photograph. Detective Cole's team obtained a warrant for Arthur Vance's property, a perfectly manicured home on the edge of town. They found nothing at first. His basement was immaculate. His garage was spotless. There was no secret lair, no hidden trophies. But Arthur, the long-haul driver, had a hobby: model trains. In a locked shed in the backyard, he had built an elaborate landscape, a miniature world replicating every stop on his trucking route. The team was about to give up when a young forensic tech noticed a minute discrepancy. One of the rolling hills in the landscape was a tiny bit too smooth, a bit too recently painted. Beneath that hill, tucked away in the meticulously crafted foam and plaster, they found a small metal box. Inside were 14 items. Not body parts, not jewelry. Each item was a single, nondescript object from the victims' lives. A movie ticket stub from the night Emily Hayes disappeared. A worn-out library card belonging to Sarah Jenkins. A keychain from the car of the hitchhiker in California. These weren't trophies of conquest. They were tokens of possession. Proof that the quiet man wasn't just taking lives. He was collecting them, placing them in his private, miniature world, a silent ledger of his own secret notoriety. Arthur Vance, 62, was arrested at a routine check-in with his parole officer, an appointment he made every month for a decades-old, non-violent misdemeanor he received for a hunting violation. He went quietly. He asked for his lawyer and then for a cup of black coffee. He never broke his calm, collected demeanor. When presented with the evidence, the only thing Arthur Vance said, his voice as quiet and gentle as it was every Sunday morning, was, "I just stopped where the work was." He was indicted for the murders of 14 people across 4 states. The final tally, however, will likely never be known. The true terror of the quiet man wasn't his violence, but his ability to simply disappear back into the crowd, leaving nothing behind but an unanswered question and an open file. The case of the quiet man, Arthur Vance, teaches us a crucial, chilling lesson. We are taught to fear the shadow, the stranger on the dark street, the person who looks menacing. But the most dangerous people often operate in the full glare of the sun. They earn your trust, they become your neighbor, your volunteer, your Sunday school teacher. They used their very respectability as camouflage. Detective Cole and his tiny team proved that the greatest obstacle to finding serial killers is not the criminal's genius, but the systemic silos between law enforcement agencies. It took a dedicated detective with a single, handwritten, August file to break a 30-year pattern. It took technology that didn't exist until decades after the first crime to finally give names and faces back to the victims who had been forgotten. And it reminds us, the true measure of a community isn't how quickly they solve a tragedy, but how long they remember the quiet lives that were extinguished. Sarah Jenkins, Emily Hayes, Lisa Thorne, and a dozen others, they are notorious now not because of the killer who took them but because of the man who refused to let their cases stay cold. If this story has reminded you to look twice at the people you think you know, and to never stop demanding accountability across borders, hit the like button and share this story. We are committed to bringing you the deepest dives into the world's most compelling true crime stories. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you never miss a tale that challenges what you think you know. Because sometimes, the most notorious villain is the one you've truly never heard of.